We don't want any illegal migration in Poland. This is what we promised. This is why our government was elected, and not even one Muslim illegal migrant will come to Poland, ever.
The offer of tolerance, what I have made several times to Brussels. I said, guys, you can create whatever migration system you would like to do, but don't force Hungary to do the same thing.
We want a Europe of free and sovereign nations, and not a sick leftist ideology. And all the soldiers that are defending the eastern border deserve a bow, a very deep bow from you.
We have a disease, we vaccinate ourselves against it. Islam is a disease. We need to vaccinate ourselves against that.
En mijn boodschap aan hen is, wegwezen. Vertrek naar een islamitisch land. Dan kunt u genieten van islamitische regels. Dat zijn hun regels, maar niet de onze. Dit is ons land. Niet uw land, maar ons land.
The pot of immigration has been boiling for far too long. But who's really getting burned here? Can the cultural catastrophe brought by forced integration of Muslim migrants ever actually be reversed? Why is it that only a handful of Western politicians dare to voice their fears caused by mass immigration, while the rest just look the other way? Welcome back to Breakpoint. When the wind changes, even a stagnant ship will move. Today's political winds seem to be shifting even faster, particularly around the topic of immigration. Across Europe and beyond, several influential voices have emerged, championing stricter borders, tighter policies, and most controversially, a halt to Muslim immigration. Their message is clear: close the borders, protect the culture, and put their people first. Don't go anywhere, as we bring you the perspectives behind why these politicians believe that defending national identity is more important than embracing multiculturalism. In the Netherlands, Geert Wilders has long been a voice for those who feel like their country is slipping through their fingers. He insists that he's not far right, rather that he's just a man who speaks up for the ordinary Dutch citizen. Often referred to as the Dutch Donald Trump for his outspoken views, Wilders made headlines when he declared that the Netherlands can't take it anymore. We have to think about our own people first now. Borders closed, zero asylum seekers. He makes no bones about his position, even when it draws criticism from across the aisle. For many in the Netherlands, Wilders is that friend who says out loud what everyone else is thinking, but too scared to admit.
Een geweldige ideologie is die haat en terreur met zich meebrengt en dus niet bij Nederland hoort. 2. Sluit onze grenzen onmiddellijk voor asielzoekers en immigranten uit islamitische landen. Zeg Schengen op en voer weer eigen grenscontroles in. 3. Begin met het ontmantelen van de instituties van de islam, zoals moskeeën. En begin bijvoorbeeld met het sluiten van al die moskeeën die buitenlandse financiering krijgen. En waar bijvoorbeeld Diyanet, het Turkse ministerie van Godsdienstzaken, de baas is. En niet wij. 4. Sluit iedereen op die met geweld dreigt of geweld gebruikt of zet ze ons land uit. En pak die honderden aanhangers en die duizenden sympathisanten van de jihadistische beweging in Nederland, als het moet, preventief op. En 5, voorzitter, vraag alle scholen, kranten, media om een Mohammed-cartoon te tonen. Niet om te provoceren, maar om te laten zien dat wij nooit wijken voor bedreigingen en geweld en dat wij trots en fier achter onze vrijheid staan.
He has described the current wave of Muslim immigration as an assault on Dutch culture, insisting that indigenous people are being ignored because of the mass immigration. They feel mistreated. It's a familiar argument, one that resonates with those who feel their country, their traditions, and their values are being pushed aside. We all know that a watched pot never boils, and Wilders knows that too. As a matter of fact, he thinks the Dutch have been watching the pot of immigration for too long, waiting for something to change. He's not waiting anymore. He is turning the heat off entirely. Regardless, his recent success in Dutch politics came after he softened some of his more extreme policies, like the outright ban on the Quran or shutting down all Islamic schools and mosques. Those ideas, he said, were being put in the koelkast, Dutch for fridge, but they haven't disappeared entirely. Even though he cooled his rhetoric, he still managed to more than double his party's representation in parliament, from 17 to 37 seats. That is no small feat in a country known for its political moderation. And it was his style that won people over. During almost nightly TV debates leading up to the election, he outperformed his rivals with slick, bite-sized slogans that stuck in the minds of voters. His slogan, "The Netherlands can't take it anymore," was as catchy as it was effective. Nevertheless, it is not only the Dutch that can't take it anymore. In Central Europe, just 970 kilometers away from the Netherlands, another prominent figure has emerged, waving the banner of anti-Islamic immigration loud and proud. Dominik Tarczyński, a member of the Law and Justice Party, PiS in Poland, is unapologetic in his views. He famously said, "We don't want Poland being taken over by Muslims, Buddhists or someone else," drawing a clear line in the sand. To him and his supporters, Poland's Christian identity is something sacred, and they're not about to let it be diluted by waves of non-Christian immigrants. For him, it is a matter of protecting the nation's cultural fabric. He firmly believes that the influx of Muslim immigrants is a threat to Poland's way of life, and he is not shy about saying it. As he puts it, "For me, multicultural society, it's not a value. Christian culture, these are the virtues for us." It's a sentiment that resonates with many Poles, particularly those who feel that Western Europe has lost its way by embracing multiculturalism at the expense of their own national identities. Poland's strict immigration policies, which prioritize Christian refugees while rejecting Muslim asylum seekers, have drawn criticism from across Europe, particularly from Britain. But to Tarczyński and his supporters, these policies are a necessary defense against the erosion of Poland's cultural and religious identity.
We can be called populists, nationalists, racists. I don't care. I care about my family and about my country.
I do believe, and I think that Poland is last stronghold of Christianity and normality in Europe. We just passed the law that our soldiers, Coast Guard or whatever, they can use live bullets to kill.
While Tarczyński was fighting his battles in the Polish parliament, another fierce voice was rising in the European Parliament. Iza Zaczkowska-Hernik, representing the Polish Confederation Party. She was one of the loudest critics of the EU's migration policies. She has repeatedly linked the influx of immigrants to rising crime rates, particularly violent crimes against women and children. In one speech, she told EU leaders, "You are responsible for every assault, every rape that happens because of the influx of illegal immigrants."
You are responsible for every rape, every violent attack, every tragedy caused by illegal migrants because you are inviting them to come to Europe.
In her speeches, she painted a vivid picture of a Europe under siege, where people no longer felt safe in their own cities. She believes that Europe's leaders have failed to protect their citizens. Like an old general who knows that an army marches on its stomach, she argues that Europe cannot be strong if it is weakened by immigration policies that don't put the safety and well-being of its citizens first. Much like her Polish colleague Tarczyński, Iza believes that protecting European values means limiting immigration from Muslim-majority countries and safeguarding the cultural identity of European nations. Speaking of safeguarding the cultural identity of European nations, if there's one politician who has been even more outspoken about it than Iza, it's Viktor Orban, Hungary's Prime Minister. Orban has made it abundantly loud and clear, "I can only speak for the Hungarian people, and they don't want any migration." His government has taken a zero-tolerance approach to refugees, particularly from Muslim-majority countries, and he has repeatedly referred to them as Muslim invaders rather than refugees. For him, the issue is about protecting the integrity of Hungary's national identity. He insists that Europe's Islamic refugee crisis is an existential threat to the continent's Christian roots. He openly expressed his profound frustration with Brussels' attempt to impose migrant quotas on Hungary and other Eastern European nations, by likening it to a classic case of too many chiefs and not enough Indians. It's said that you can't please everyone, and Orban knows that all too well.
Migration is an issue which is a disintegrating factor. Why do we need it? So if you have a problem in Italy and in many countries that you decided to let many migrants come in, and now you have difficulties how to manage to live together with them, it's a serious problem.
His critics accuse him of xenophobia and Islamophobia, but for many Hungarians, he's simply standing up for them. Like a dam holding back the flood, Orban has positioned himself as Hungary's protector, keeping the tide of Muslim immigrants from overwhelming the country. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, in Australia, Senator Pauline Hanson has made a career out of her anti-Islam rhetoric. She has become a champion for those who fear that Islamic immigration is threatening the nation's foundational identity. Known for her controversial and often provocative statements, Hanson once remarked that Australia was in danger of being swamped by Muslims who bear a culture that is incompatible with our own. In her eyes, Islam isn't just a religion, it's a political ideology that threatens the secular, liberal values of the West. Islam is a disease, she once said. We need to vaccinate ourselves against that. Hanson, much like Wilders and Tarczynski, frames her stance as one of the national self-defense. She argues that it's not about hate, but about protecting the nation from a culture that she believes is incompatible with Australian values. When asked about reconciling Islamic values with Western liberalism, she bravely maintained that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Hanson's views have garnered a considerable following, especially in rural and working-class areas of Australia, where people feel that their way of life is being threatened by outside forces. Much like Wilders, she insists that it's time to put her country first, to close the borders and protect the homeland from those who would impose their values on Australia. In one particularly inflammatory moment, Hanson walked into the Australian Senate wearing a burqa, a stunt meant to highlight her desire to ban Islamic dress in public spaces.
I'm quite happy to remove this because this is not what should belong in this parliament. In light of what is happening with national security, there has been 13 foiled national threats against us with terrorism, 3 that have been successful, and Australians have lost their lives. Terrorism is a true threat to our country. Many Australians are very much in fear of it.
Critics accuse her of fear-mongering and racism, but Hanson insists she's just looking out for white Australia. She has consistently denied that her views are racist, arguing that Islam is not a race, but a political ideology that threatens Australia's values. What is becoming crystal clear, however, is that people are feeling increasingly alienated in their own countries as they see the rise of multiculturalism and the influx of immigrants from countries with vastly different values. As we all know, familiarity breeds contempt, and many Europeans believe that the more foreign cultures settle in their homelands, the more their own way of life is eroded. In some ways, this resistance to Islamic immigration is more than just national identity. It's about a sense of insecurity. Many people feel that their governments have failed to protect them from the negative consequences of mass immigration, including rising crime rates and cultural fragmentation. They say a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and to politicians like Wilders and others, Islamic immigration represents that weak link. These politicians are not afraid to say what many of their consultants are thinking. Whether history will judge them as defenders of their nations or as divisive figures remains to be seen. But for now, they continue to ride the wave of support that shows no signs of slowing down. Like and share this video to spread awareness. If you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out on our future content. Thank you for your support.